Hello, my friends. Welcome back. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but this was something that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about. And it's the kind of concept within coaching of kind of creating the correct environment for your participants to succeed. And whether that's in a team sport, in an individual setting, anything really. And so it's probably the biggest interesting factor to me when it comes to coaching. I'm currently doing strength and conditioning, so a lot of that is one-to-one. But I've coached many sports: rugby, football, basketball, volleyball. I've even worked on some athletics. I've done outdoor work, kayaking, mountain biking, different things like that. And the common theme is always the transferable skills. So the ability to talk to your individuals, talk to your participants, understand them, get to know them, and then using that information, finding ways and means to help them tick and to create that environment for them to succeed. So it's a big thing for me. It's really interesting. And so I've got a couple of theories that I've been looking up. I studied a lot of it when I was at university, and it's always been something that's kind of stuck with me, and I've always looked to explore further when given the opportunity, and I think that this is a good chance to do it. The whole aim for this is creating the right environment to allow your participants or your team to make progress in one way or another. And this doesn't just have to be with regards to sport. It can be with, in a workplace or family or friends. There's definitely some things here. So the first theory I'm going to look at is called the achievement goals theory. And this was come up with by a guy in 1989 called Nichols. And it's basically, you could have two individuals, two different mindsets in those individuals. One of which is task-orientated, one of which is ego-orientated. Now, task-orientated, they're more focused on the process. Their success is more defined by their own personal improvement, their development, their learning, and the effort that they put into learning a skill. So then, because of that, the threat of failure is viewed as less, because that's just kind of seen as part of the process. And so a lot of that kind of comes from within. They want to kind of carry out a task or learn a skill for the sake of doing the task, rather than what the other individual would be regarded as is ego-orientated. So they're kind of more looking for their success to be defined through being better than others and displaying kind of superior ability over other people. So with that comes a lot of kind of comparison to other people, and then as a result, the threat of failure is higher, because they'd see themselves as not being good enough if they fail. So then what you have is, if success is likely with these individuals, they'll tend to try more. They'll tend to try more. But if there's a higher chance of failure within these individuals, then they may withdraw a little bit more. They may withdraw a little bit more and kind of because they may be scared to fail, because they're then seen as less adequate, or less adequate, less capable. So with that being said, it's the sort of thing was like they'd withdraw because you can't fail if you didn't try, kind of thing. So the first thing as a coach is you want to kind of create an environment where individuals or clients are more focused on the process itself and the tasks that they've got, the challenges that come across with those tasks, rather than the other side of being kind of outcome orientated. So that's the first one, and I'll just I'll build on that a little bit more. So with these sort of two individuals, your task-orientated individuals and your ego-orientated individuals, there comes motivation. You've got intrinsic motivation, you've got extrinsic motivation. Your intrinsic motivation, is what comes from within. So kind of what I mentioned with your task-orientated individuals, where they do it for the enjoyment of doing it. They do it to hone their skills in a craft, or to improve in one certain area of the other because they enjoy doing that. So that motivation comes from within. Your ego-orientated individuals, they're more extrinsically motivated. So they do it for accolades, for prizes, for trophies, for recognition, for praise. And so again, when those ego-orientated people who are extrinsically motivated, if they don't do well in a certain thing, or they don't win the trophy that they wanted to win, or they don't get the raise that they wanted to get, they see that as a failure, and they see themselves as no good. And in a coaching environment, that's not what you want. You don't want people to think that they're no good, because it's a constant process. It's a constant process. So trying to kind of hone those people to be more task orientated, more task focused, having the intrinsic motivation to be, just constantly improving upon their own ability from day one to day 100, let's say, and kind of constantly keeping that in check. It's something I try to do with my clients. And really kind of making them see, like, look, this is where you started, and with the work that you're putting in, this is where you now are. And we will have days where, where success isn't going to be like solely linear. We're going to have little kind of downward troughs. But it's making them see that those downward troughs are all part of the process, all part of the journey that's necessary for them to kind of continue. Because a lot of the time it's, that success, it will go up, we'll take a downward turn, and then you'll get that bounce back up. And it's kind of maintaining that kind of that positivity and that broader outlook on this, and to kind of keep that perspective in check, rather than them thinking like, oh, well, I did this last week and I can only do this week, so I must not be improving. You're like, well, no, like it's all part of the journey. And that kind of brings me into the last one, having, again, you've got two different mindsets. So kind of what I just spoke about there requires a growth mindset. So it's a belief that intelligence and ability can be developed through effort and specific strategies, as well as help from others. So kind of maintaining that, look, yeah, right, you're not where you want to be right now, but through kind of a bit of work and some effort and consistency, you will get where you want to be, and you'll find that to be, you'll find that journey to be enjoyable. Encouraging them to kind of embrace challenges, and then any setbacks kind of persisting through. And so then any mistakes that they make, they're viewed as opportunities to learn and improve, rather than you've just failed and you're no good, you're not going to get where you want to be, you never will, because you're no good, because you just failed. That leans more into the other kind of mindset of, so it's called a fixed mindset. So there's sometimes a belief that intelligence and ability are unchangeable regardless of the effort that you put in. and kind of going back to your ego-orientated individuals. You know, they avoid challenges, they fear failure, and then they give up easily when they're faced with obstacles. So that kind of goes again with what I said, where it's like, you know, I can't fail if I didn't try. So it's really sort of, you'll get some individuals that will come in, you'll work with some people, and they've already got that kind of that growth mindset. They're already task oriented, they're already intrinsically motivated, and you just need to kind of maybe add a couple of things here or there to kind of keep them on track and makes it easier to work with. But then you will get others, and you know, particularly kids with pressure from parents and school and everything outside, that may have that kind of that fixed mindset. They see the favorite football star being supremely talented, and they don't see the work that they've had to put in to get there. So they think that they were just born with that ability. And so then there's maybe an element of frustration with it when they're not as talented, or they're not as skilled as other people, either their age, slightly older than them, or who they see on TV. So it's really, really important to kind of implement a strategy to develop that mindset and change that mindset from a like fixed mindset, ego orientated, to kind of that growth set with having those intrinsic motivation from inside, and kind of setting those individual parameters specific for the people that you're working with. And so it's really, really fun. It's really fun because every person you work with is very different, and it's always a challenge. I think that through my endeavors of coaching, I've done many different things. The hard skills, you know, like simply teaching how to throw a rugby pass, that's obviously not transferable. You know, I can't have the knowledge of teaching how to throw a rugby pass and take that into strength and conditioning, you know, because there will be biomechanics that align and that you can work with specifically to improve the rugby pass and things like that. But it's more the soft skills that are really the interesting factor to me. The kind of the, like I say, the kind of the ability to create a bond with the people that you're working with, understanding them more, communicating that effectively. I think communication is a big part as a coach that you need to kind of constantly work on. You need to be honest, but you need to be honest in a very specific way. You know, like if you feel like one of your individuals is not performing to the highest level, you know, you've got to ask yourself, what's going to get a better result out of them? Just being like, that was shit, to do it again, no good. Or, okay, let's have a think. Do we think we can do better than what we're currently doing? I personally believe you can. Here's a couple of areas that we can improve upon. Let's go again. And then with that, it kind of, they're then kind of process or task oriented, because they're like, okay, so the process that I'm currently going through, I'm here, but I need to, in order for me to get to here, I need to do these things. So then they focus on those things throughout. So it's really, really important, really, really important. Now, slight sort of deviation. I listened to an audiobook recently called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. If you haven't listened to it or read it, I would definitely advise you to do so. And there's a lot of powerful messages in it about the kind of the importance of kind of individual ability. And I'd say nowadays it's somewhat of a Bible for me. You know, like there was a lot of things that I was able to pick up and learn from it that I've never been able to pick up and learn from any other audiobook or book for that matter. So I've got a couple of quotes here that I'll kind of break down and refer to what I've already mentioned and kind of compare. So the first one is, pride in the action itself and the doing, not in the end result. So that in itself is really just enjoying the process. You know, you as an individual, whether you're an athlete or whether you're an artist or whatever it is that you are, enjoying the process of mastering your craft rather than kind of getting it done. You know, it will probably allow you to perform for longer and be more consistent with your output in that realm. So yeah, pride in the action itself, in the doing, not in the end result. Just, yeah, being attentive to what it is that you're doing and the task that you're carrying out. Another one was, happiness is the state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's value. Okay, so this is it's a bit wordy, but in summary, it kind of makes reference to that intrinsic motivation. You know, happiness is a state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. So it comes from the pursuit of kind of personally meaningful goals, not because somebody else has said that what you've done is a good job, not because you've received a big trophy, but because you yourself have set yourself a specific goal to master a certain craft or master a certain element of something, carry out that task as diligently as you can and kind of seeing it through. That's where the happiness and the value really comes from. Another one that's kind of linked a little bit more to that intrinsic motivation is, this one's quite deep, but I swear by my life that I will never live for the sake of another man. And that in itself is kind of going back to what I said with regards to extrinsic motivation. If you look to that extrinsic motivation, then you're constantly relying on other individuals for that validation, for that gratification. Whether it's, like I say, whether it's the accolades, whether it's the trophy, whether it's the praise, whereas kind of living for yourself and doing things for yourself for the pure enjoyment of doing it is kind of should be where the buck stops, you know, because we live in a world nowadays with social media and constant kind of information, constant different perspectives, that we're always thinking that we need to be like somebody else or be like something else or do something a certain way, rather than taking the time to really figure out our own process, our own way of wanting to do it, and finding that enjoyment within that. This quote is probably the most kind of meaningful. It's maybe the most famous from the book itself, because it's just that intrinsic drive. And in order to kind of be sustainable with your motivation, that does need to come within, otherwise it will just fluctuate up and down. And then the final one, the world you desired can be won. It is possible, it's yours. So, you know, in its whole, it kind of, that, the way I see that is, it's kind of, it looks at that growth mindset again, and it believing in the value of effort and perseverance. So if you hit a setback, knowing that you can continue through that setback, the world that you want to create, the reality you want to create for yourself can be possible, but you have to be dedicated to the process in making that possible for yourself. And that's the key word, for yourself. Creating a world for somebody else because somebody else has asked you to. It's false, it's extrinsic, it becomes ego orientated because you think, well, this person wants me to do this, I'm no good at it, therefore I must be a failure. And so it's really, really interesting. Those four quotes were what stood out to me. And they do somewhat align with the process that kind of as a coach and just as individuals we go through. It doesn't have to always be in a sports environment. It can be whatever it is that you do, whether you're a businessman, whether you're a painter, you're a musician, you know, anything. I think that the whole reason of doing things the thrill and the enjoyment of doing it, and my enjoyment of doing it is creating these environments for people to also enjoy doing what they do, right? So it's a total, like, there's a total pyramid build-up thing of layers of my processes, enjoying implementing processes for others to enjoy the process, which is a bit whack. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I think that's the kind of the takeaway message. Like, whether you're a sports person or not, you have your own interests. Having the whole thought of, I must do this in order to appease something, somebody else, receive something, doesn't make an awful lot of sense when you really boil it down. The whole time you should be thinking about how you're going to do it, what you're doing, how that looks like. And then you invest in the process, because realistically the process is what takes the most time. So if you're present within the process, that means that your life is spent mostly being present, rather than if you're kind of focused on a future reward, say, then you're not going to be entirely present throughout the process, and that could then become more problematic and kind of play on your mind. Yeah, that's just some thoughts of mine. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts on it, feel free to give me a message. I'm mostly active on Instagram. You can leave a comment on the video as well with your thoughts. I'd be happy to discuss things in the comment section here. Like, subscribe, share if you like. My social medias, if you want to follow them, see what I'm up to on there. It's Trainmore97 on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I don't really use Twitter all too much, to be honest, but TikTok is a little bit more prominent. Instagram's the main one. So if you want to see what I'm up to on there, or you want to shoot me a message on there to kind of discuss something that came up in here, something you found interesting, something you found yourself that you would like to explore, please do. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. It is Wednesday morning for me. I'm now going to get ready and take myself to work. So thank you very much again, guys. Have a wonderful week.